So thank you. Our first speaker for this session, this very last session, is Dr. Giselle Perez, who's an assistant professor at the Harvard Medical School and a clinical psychologist at the Massachusetts General Hospital. She's the director of the Mind-Body Program for cancer survivors and associate director of the MGH Adolescent and Young Adult Program. She'll be speaking about addressing the psychosocial needs of individuals living with VHL, which is such an important part of our experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And hello, everyone. I am so grateful to be here, to VHL, the Alliance, our patients, our families, and just to have this opportunity to talk about such an important part of VHL care that is, for me, highly overlooked. I'm going to start by introducing the concept of mind-body medicine. For many years, when people would mention or bring about this idea of introducing or using mind-body medicine as a complement to medical care, people would respond partly with some disbelief as well as curiosity. And over the past several years, the mind-body medicine as a tool has grown in popularity, but people still experience some tension between, again, having a sense of interest and also disbelief in how it actually functions. And this has a lot to do with people's lack of understanding of what mind-body medicine is, what it encompasses, and how it actually can help. And so I'm here partly to help you see how strongly our minds and our bodies are connected. This session is going to be a little bit different, so I'm going to start with an experiential exercise. So please humor me. Go ahead and get comfortable in your seats. Close your eyes or gently let your gaze fall in front of you. And I want you to start to imagine that you're in a kitchen. It could be your kitchen. It could be a friend's kitchen, a family member's kitchen. Whatever it might be, just have it be a kitchen that's associated with pleasant memories. And as you visualize this kitchen, I want you to look at the walls, look at the windows. Perhaps you find yourself walking towards a window and you notice a slight breeze. As you look at your counters, you notice a cutting board with a lemon. Beside the cutting board with the lemon, you see a small kitchen knife. I want you to imagine now taking that lemon and just lifting it and taking a smell, noticing the scent that emerges. Now lower that lemon onto the cutting board, pick up the knife, and very slowly cut that lemon in half. And as you continue to visualize this experience of you in this kitchen with your lemon, go ahead and cut it one more time in quarters. And now gently lift the lemon to your lips and go ahead and take a bite. All right, open your eyes. For those of you who participated, how many of you tasted the lemon? By a show of hands, right? Isn't that incredible, right? You may have noticed that you pursed your lips. Maybe you started, noticing some saliva. And that is all with the power of suggestion. I've actually done this exercise with jelly donuts. I recommend it. My kids really like it. But before I proceed to talk about the power of mind-body, I want you to take this moment to reflect on what it's like, perhaps, to live with VHL. All right? I personally don't know what that experience is like, but I can tell you what my patients tell me. And what they share is it's a lot like life interrupted. That interruption looks different depending on the individual and where they are in their life stage. So for adolescent and young adults, individuals who I tend to work with a lot, I love working with this group. A diagnosis of VHL signifies an interruption in critical life domains during a time of peak physical, social, emotional development. And so what you have is a population that is grappling with the normative developmental challenges one experiences as they transition from adolescence into adulthood, along with the challenges of living with this disease full of uncertainty. And then you have adults who face similar challenges, right? But now you might see an introduction of caregiving challenges, caregiving demands. So not only caring for yourself, but perhaps caring for others, loved ones, family members with VHL, your children. And let's talk about children. And this is a topic that came up earlier yesterday, issues of fertility. Struggling with wanting to have kids, but also feeling a sense of guilt and worry what it would mean to have a child and perhaps pass this gene. Right? And having children is a major milestone that our patients talk about and don't get enough opportunity to discuss with their providers. Then there's the social nature of VHL. How many of my patients tell me they have so many people around them, and yet there's a sense of feeling alone, misunderstood. There's this inability to connect, not because you lack empathy. If anything, you have so much more of it. But it's this idea that there's a sense of inability to relate, right? Maybe an inability to understand the experiences of others when people say, oh my gosh, the end of the world is I got a D on an exam, or I broke up with my boyfriend. Well, you know what the end of the world is? This, having to wait for my screening test, right? And I haven't even touched on, for the sake of time, the financial, the physical challenges that our patients experience, but let's just now broaden this up to the social environment, the economical environment, the number of challenges that we face as individuals being here in the world, and how that impacts us in so many ways. So why do I bring this up in a talk about mind, body, and psychosocial needs of VHL? Well, I'm going to simplify it by describing what essentially is a number of stressors, life challenges, right? If we are living in a state where we're chronically being stressed, what that's going to lead to is a chronic activation of our stress response. You've all heard of our fight or flight response, right? There's this system designed to help protect us when we're in danger, right? It has an evolutionary purpose. So a joke I say is, way back when we were living with lions and tigers and bears, oh my. In that moment, right, if you were in the forest, right, and you come across something dangerous, the lion, right, taking a step back to evaluate the situation and determine how you're going to react can actually place you in harm, right? So the appropriate thing is for your body to respond quickly, almost without thinking, to keep you safe. And indeed, that's what it does, right? So our body reacts quickly. It activates the stress systems to help mobilize resources, internal resources, to keep us safe, right? It moves systems away from things that we don't need, like our digestive system, right, when we're responding to danger, to things that we do need to keep us safe, like our legs, big limbs, right? But what that feels like is not so good. It feels like indigestion. It feels like tension, muscle tension. It feels like confusion, difficulty seeing. Now you might ask, right, our stress response, our alarm in our bodies is there to help us. So why is this a problem? Why am I bringing this up? Well, it's not a problem if you're fighting something dangerous, right? Because you need to react quickly. But it's a problem when it's activated in daily life circumstances, getting stuck in traffic. It could be having to do grocery shopping, having to think about work and all your other activities, or simply just thinking about what your next scan might look like, having worries, emotions, negative emotions. All of these things trigger that same physiological reaction as if you were fighting a lion. Again, why does this matter? Well, think about a machine, right? Our body is constantly trying to help us. It's constantly trying to protect us. So the stress response doesn't stick around. It stops. Our body says, okay, stressor is gone, demand is gone, come back to normal. And so our stress response, our stress systems are deactivated. But you have a thought, you have a worry that stress system is activated once again, and then it shuts off. What happens to a machine that gets turned on and off, on and off, on and off repeatedly? It's vulnerable to breaking down, right? It's going to experience a sense of wear and tear. And we use this term of allostatic load to describe the wear and tear that stress has on our body, right? This issue of being overly active in managing the chronic stress that we have in our life. And there's so much data now that's coming around that's making this link between the stress response, chronic stressors, and our health, right? We're seeing a lot of this in our cancer populations, and we're looking at things such as social determinants of health as being something that's increasing our allostatic load. So now that brings us into resiliency. One of the best ways that I think we can help our patients is to acknowledge that life has many challenges. Life is stressful, and what we can do is proactively provide them with skills to manage life stressors, right? In a sense, what we can do is build their resilience, their ability to adapt to life challenges so that they can continue to effectively function. And the field of mind-body medicine takes this wellness approach, right? It recognizes that our minds, our bodies, our thoughts, all of that is interconnected. We can't ignore one because it impacts the other. And one of the things that we recognize is this issue of the stress response and the relaxation response, right? What we believe is that when we're activated, right, our stress systems, the HPA, the sympathetic nervous system, is all activated when we're in a stress reaction. And the opposite of that is the relaxation response, a physiological state of rest and relax. So my colleagues at the Mass General took this concept of mind-body practices and the relaxation response, and they created a program specifically designed to help build resilience. It has a wellness approach, right? And you'll hear why I keep focusing on wellness. The idea is that if we take mind-body tools, if we take cognitive behavioral strategies and positive psychology tools, what we can do is enhance a number of resiliency processes. So not only stress management, but also growth enhancement, a sense of efficacy, self-efficacy. We can optimize social support and healthy lifestyle behaviors. And all of those processes, along with the relaxation response, is what ultimately enhances resilience. And my belief, or what I'm looking to test, is if we can intervene on resilience, if we can improve resilience, does that actually lead to long-term changes in quality of life, which is critical for individuals who are suffering with uncertainty and chronic life illness. So what we do with building resilience is it's normalizing the stress process, right? It's depathologizing that experience, and it's tilting the balance towards health, right? Not trying to say, oh, stress is bad. Stress is a normal part of life. It's not saying, well, now you're experiencing depression, there's something wrong with you. It's saying, of course you're feeling sad or anxious because you've got a lot of stuff going on, but let's give you the resources to help. There's a lot of things that happen when you're eliciting the relaxation response and when you're engaging in these processes. There's changes in the way your brain functions, right? So we move from really thinking with our emotional mind and with our, think and react mind, right? So there's a change from bottom up to top down approach. What that looks like, and when I actually translate this to my patients, is I say, okay, imagine that you have a glass of water full of mud, right? When you're in the stress response, and let's pretend there's mud here, there isn't, I promise, because I wouldn't drink it, but if you have a glass with mud and you're in the stress response, it's like you're stirring that glass. What happens if there's enough mud there and you're stirring it quickly? Well, you can't see through the glass. Well, that's pretty much what it's like when you're in stress response and you're trying to think clearly. You just can't. You're unable to because you're with your emotional mind. But take that same glass that has mud, go ahead and settle it. Right? The mud is still there, your thoughts, right? But what happens is those fall to the bottom of the glass. Guess what? Although they're still there, you're able to think much more clearly. And so that's how we start to explain what the power it might be when you're engaging these practices. I'm not going to go into detail into these practices. These are some of the things, the tools that I teach my patients. But part of the relaxation response is this idea of choosing a mental anchor, right? And allowing your thoughts to come and go as they need to, right? Because it's, again, we're not fighting against it. We're recognizing that they're there, and we're just not giving them too much emphasis, right? We teach them how to have more awareness of what their drains are, what their charges are, and how to regain balance in those moments when they're feeling particularly drained. We teach them how to identify the thoughts that might be triggering the stress response, right? And to challenge them, not so much as we do typically with CBT, cognitive behavioral treatment, but also to think about what are some perspectives that you would like to take in this situation to help fuel more adaptive responses. We use a lot of humor, right? This idea of looking at things with curiosity changes how we respond emotionally to those situations. We talk about acceptance, which is actually a very dirty word for a lot of patients, especially young adults. They don't like it. I use acknowledgement. But this idea of understanding that this situation can't be controlled, and that sucks. We're not telling you to just say, like, this is good. Acceptance means fill in the blank. It means gaining control, deciding how you want to respond so you're feeling in control of your response and not driven by the situation. We talk about social support, the different types of social support. How do you optimize it? How do you understand it? How do you not overdo your ability to give, right? Because we tend to do a lot of that. And then we talk a lot about self-compassion, right? We're our greatest critics. We're so tough on ourselves, and so are our patients, especially when they're comparing themselves to others, right? And so we talk about how do you learn how to talk to yourself in a more compassionate way, much like you would with a loved one. So what's the evidence? We're doing a number of trials. We've done a number of trials with the SMART 3RP, the resiliency training that I shared with you. One of the earlier trials we did was in patients with MGUS and smoldering myeloma. And this came about because of some earlier work where we have noticed, or we see actually in the literature, that there's a downregulation of NF-kappa B. It is implicated in the progression of smoldering myeloma, smoldering myeloma and MGUS into multiple myeloma. And that downregulation happens or was noticed among people who are practicing the relaxation response. And so what we wanted to see is if we actually take an evidence-based treatment, can we bring about the same change, right? And of course, we also collected some self-report measures in a waitlist controlled trial with 93 patients. What we found, again, it's a small trial, and it was a waitlist controlled trial, which has its benefits and challenges. And what we found is that there were significant improvements when you compared our immediate to our waitlist group in terms of coping, depression, and optimism. There were some trends in the right direction for decreases in NF-kappa B activity, but when you compare it to our waitlist, it wasn't significant. Another trial that I led with the SMART 3RP was with my adolescent young adult cancer survivors who were in post-treatment. This was a labor of love. What I actually did was a virtual intervention with survivors from all over the world. And this is a group-based intervention, so you can imagine bringing people from Egypt, Poland, Mexico, Canada, US, right? They were all together and learning these skills to manage the challenges of life after cancer treatment. And what we found were similar promising results. We saw improvements in coping, in anxiety, in worry, and depression. Actually, we moved individuals who were actually approaching clinical levels of depression to below those thresholds. And there's more, and I won't go through all of these, but if you look at the number of trials that we've led with the SMART 3RP, we are seeing similar improvements in a lot of these measures. And I'm looking to do the same, and I'm actually running a current pilot trial with our patients with VHL. With my goal is to look at how something like this could actually impact long-term quality of life. And so as we approach the end of this discussion, the Institute of Medicine had come out several years ago, decades ago, with this idea of the need to think about integrating psychosocial care into the care of our cancer survivors in order to actually deliver what we consider to be quality care. We're not doing such a good job of that yet in oncology, but I think that this is the perfect opportunity to think about that with our VHL patients. What that requires us to do, though, is to change the paradigm of psychosocial care delivery in VHL care, right? What that means is I think we need to move away from a deficit model, this idea of find pathology, then treat, right? Because when you're there, it becomes that much harder. And instead move to a wellness model where you're saying, these are life stressors, let's give you skills to help you manage those, to promote wellness, to promote well-being. And so that's my hope, my goals for the patients I work with the research that I do, to really impact whole person care in VHL. So I want to say thank you all for taking the time to just listen to this talk. It was very different from the ones that we have had earlier, but I hope I've been able to emphasize the importance of mind-body medicine and wellness in VHL. I want to thank our patients and families, the funding agencies that have supported a lot of this work, and my team and collaborators. It takes a village, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
We have time for about one question, if anybody has a pressing question. No? Question?
Hi, thank you very much. Resonated with your talk a lot, thank you. My question is about funding for wellness treatment. What are you seeing in terms of insurers and government's ability or appetite for this work?
That's a great question, and that's where I spend a lot of my time thinking. I think part of this is to demonstrate the benefits, right? So a lot of this will come with cost-effectiveness studies. Can we actually see changes in how patients engage in the medical system? That is something that, our administrators like to see, and also something that might be more convincing to insurers. So I think that that's something that may come with time in terms of where it might be going. But institutes like NCCIH in the US have an interest in complementary medicine and are really putting more money towards these types of work. And all the other institutes like PCORI as well. Unfortunately, it's been challenging with rare disease to do this work because they want bigger numbers, but I think it's this issue of being more strategic in how we approach it so that we can continue with these investigations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perez.
We are very pleased. I'm very pleased to introduce Rachel Giels, who is the chair of the Dutch VHL Patient Organization and the president of VHL Europa, past chair and CEO of International Kidney Cancer Coalition, and the medical science officer for Medical Publisher. She will be speaking about the current unmet needs and European VH families.
Thank you, Francesco. So I hope this is a bit of a good follow-up for the last talk. I hope I can do it justice, but it's a little bit different because when I was asked to speak about the unmet need of European patients, this is my first graphical thought was, there's so much wrong with the state of the Union in Europe with regard to VHL care. But I had to make choices, and that's important. So I decided to move on from the very first reaction onto some logical understanding of this. And I thought I better start off with just some facts, so we're all on the same page. So there's about 21,000 VHL patients in Europe, and that's including the Ukrainian refugee displaced population that has fled into Europe in the last 2 years. And that is in comparison to the roughly 9,000 expected patients to be in the United States. Now that's based on statistics. So that doesn't mean that we know of 21,000 patients in Europe, not at all. When I went through the registries of countries, I found for the actual diagnostic codes, fewer than 10,000 are accounted for, which means by definition we are underserving more than half of the European VHL patients because they don't even have a diagnosis. The difference, however, between Europe and, for example, the US, is most VHL patients in Europe do have insurance. And I have been completely emotionally wrought upon occasion being in the US and meeting a VHL family without insurance and understanding the huge financial burden this disease comes with it. So we are most grateful in Europe that we have a system that does more or less support the financial burden of VHL. And I have not met a family who's been under such financial burden that they've been destitute. So for that, we are very grateful. The belzutifan, for those of you who don't know, has been under consideration at the European Medicines Agency since October 2023, and we are hoping for a decision in the very near future. But we do not have that decision at this point, and for those of you who haven't seen the entire thing, this is a very difficult situation for European patients. We have had 2 compassionate use programs announced for access to belzutifan, and twice they've been canceled. This last time was in the last few weeks, and it was canceled within days. We all work towards the same goal. There's no animosity, but it is very frustrating. And this is not a fact, but it's a definite observation that 100% of patients and 100% of clinicians are frustrated by the lack of access to belzutifan in the European Union. And this is since the FDA approval in August 2021. Personally, I've attended 12 funerals. I've seen many patients go blind, have to undergo Whipple. They've become type 1 diabetics, and it's just these life-altering events that are just so hard to watch and observe. We've watched patients move to the United States. We've watched people purchase belzutifan out of pocket, which is debilitating financially and should not be the solution that people have to seek. From the patient organization, and there are a number of representatives in this audience to whom I applaud, at least 80% of the questions received regard belzutifan. And that has increased, obviously in the last few years, and we have had to move from information and navigation into expectation management, which is a very difficult situation to be as a patient advocate. So this is to introduce you briefly. There is an umbrella organization called VHL Europa. I'm the president of VHL Europa at the moment, since 2023, and we are the umbrella organization for 10 different VHL-specific national organizations or regional organizations. And we do have a website that's incredibly old at the moment. It's 10 years old, but we are launching a new website within a few weeks, and we're hoping to be much more active and present going forward in the next few years. Oops. Just to talk briefly about patient organizations, because many of the people in the audience haven't had direct experience with them, but this is a common perception of what they are, which is peer-to-peer support. And without a doubt, this is an essential component of the work that patients do for each other. They share information that is appropriate and accurate, medically checked. They support each other and help navigate the field. But in reality, patient organizations have moved on and they've professionalized. And to those of you who don't understand this, it's good to know that they are now not only local and national, but at the European level, we are very active. And we're involved in EU policy frameworks, projects, EU projects, research collaborations, and we are capable of understanding data. So this is something that we encourage collaboration and working together going forward to achieve the same results that we all want. So just another sort of a personal plug is in Europe, we also have, especially in the Netherlands, a multidisciplinary integrated care pathway for VHL disease. This is a publication I strongly encourage everyone to look up and was generated by the team in this room, the Dutch team namely, and it's been a pleasure working with them. But this takes a patient through a process from referral to triage, registration, diagnosis. It considers additional tests that may be necessary, treatment, and follow-up. And I strongly encourage people to do this. The idea is to harmonize our treatments across where possible, and this is, to the best of our knowledge, the very first integrated care pathway for any hereditary tumor syndrome, and full stop. So the unmet needs right now, the current situation, and I will list this as my top #1 unmet need, is we do not have access to a systemic therapy at this time. We play something in a terrible American game, which I hope no one ever has to play. It's called Whack-A-Mole. It's a little game where a little mole, which is an animal that lives underground, pops up from its hole and you use a hammer to whack it. Well, that's our current understanding of how VHL is typically treated. A tumor arises, we whack it, usually with a surgeon, and this is sustainable up to a point. And it's a perfectly fine approach for early identifiable tumors, but it's not sustainable in the long run. And typically as patients age and they have undergone too many surgical resections, we need a systemic treatment. Our second unmet need is really the young adults, and this has been brought up a couple times, and I cannot amplify this enough, but young adults have very special challenges, and they have decisions to make around their career, around their aspirations, whether they want to choose a career that involves physical labor, for example, or do they really need to choose a desk type of job or education in that respect? We can think of the challenges, but do we actually know them? Well, we are an evidence-based advocacy approach. We fully support data in supporting any of the decisions made, and we are proud to say that there is a current survey open at this time with this QR code for the next few weeks about assessments of aspirations and quality of life among young adults with von Hippel-Lindau, and it's open globally. And anyone is welcome to do that. It's when we define young adults, we're talking about 18 to 30-year-olds. However, I've spoken to the young VHL patient who's running the study, and he said from 16 to 32 is welcome. The ages are not so strict. We've also had the pleasure as VHL Europa to help support the young adults themselves organize biannual meetings in different European cities. This is the fourth, and I'm going to look at Francesco. The fourth or the fifth is this? This last one. I think it's the fifth, maybe, perhaps. Birta? Anyway, we had one in Munich this last May where we bring about 20 to 30, it's varied among the years, young adults together, and they have a life-changing weekend, essentially. They meet for the first time other people in the same situation. They discuss dating strategies. They discuss when you talk to your employer about your disease status, and they form a network and a friendship, which we have understand in the last 8 years since we've been doing these meetings. They share life experiences, graduations, engagements, weddings, birth of first children, and so forth, and they are growing into adulthood together. So next, I think that this is also a very important point that Giselle made an excellent presentation about, is the psychosocial needs are not just in Europe, I would say globally this is a problem, or underrepresented. And VHL patients don't see themselves as a tumor, but when they go to the doctor or the hospital, that's often what they talk about. And the idea is really to see the apple as it is, whole, and really try and think about the whole experience the patient is going to. And again, this is an approach that patient organizations are working towards to map patient experience data. What are not just the perceived obstacles, what are the obstacles that are being observed? So with regard to psychosocial, I did a little literature search, and I was actually a little bit disappointed to find out that there are a total of 4 published papers on the psychosocial impact of VHL. And the first 2 are in my very own Dutch cohort. So this is a cohort of about 300 patients, which is fairly well defined. And we have had a PhD student about 13 years ago, study this cohort for psychosocial impact. And she discovered that there was significant levels of distress among VHL patients, really not surprising. And then she went on and studied the partners of these patients and discovered that there was even more distress among the partners of patients with VHL than the patients themselves. And this was a very enlightened approach. That was a very scientifically, statistically significant approach, and it's really due to be repeated, because in this point, it is now 13 years old, and we're ready to refresh this data. And in the meantime, there's only been 2 other studies. There was a study 4 years later looking at the lived experiences, unmet needs, but it's an exploratory study, it's a narrative. And there's a last one looking at how we discuss dating among the VHL community, and how do you talk with the people you might be dating about the potential of your disease. So all in all, we've been approached by the European Medicines Agency, among others, to develop new methods of looking at quality of life. And the Utrecht group, run by Rachel van Leeuwarden, and there she spoke earlier, is also going to be setting up a quality of life survey that we will be distributing in the next near future, I should say. And this is something we're very excited to get going, especially because right now we need to update the current data also to serve as a baseline for before belzutifan is widely accepted, so we can then measure the improvement, hopefully, of quality of life as we go forward. So this is the three main ones. I have one more that's very important, and I think that this is something not so much as an unmet need, but as a call for action, is VHL societies, and we have 10 of them in Europe that are all active, educated, highly functional groups. They need to become active partners in your research, and we need to co-create the solutions as we go forward. And that's something I cannot stress enough, but we can actually get the voices of certain people that the researchers may have fewer problems. For example, I recently wrote a letter to the editor of Lancet on behalf of a research. When a patient organization writes the letter for a research, the editor will read it, and the editor will take a closer look at whether this is justified or not to review. There's also lots of other examples where patient organizations should be working very closely with the researchers, both fundamental as well as clinical work, and we should be finding solutions that we can then distribute and help disperse and form policy. So lastly, we have time to create. We're the natural partners with researchers, and I hope to look forward to being more like the KISS rather than the SCREAM, moving forward as true partners. And I just want to thank you so much for your attention, and remember that your patient groups are your best allies. So thank you so much.
Are there any questions?
Great, then I think about time.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Giles. Next up, we have Francesco Lombardi. Not only is he the president of the Associazione Italiana, Associazione Italiana Famiglia VHL, but he's also an incredible champion of the VHL community in Italy in general, and I'm very pleased to have him address the community. So,
hi everybody. I'm not in the program, but I need to speak for a few minutes. I apologize, I'm a VHL patient, and I'm very, very tired inside the evening. There was 2 days fantastic, but it's very, very heavy for me. In these 2 days, many people says to thank me for these days, but I want to specify that our association didn't participate anything because all the work was done for other people. I want to thank you. I want to thank, first of all, Andrea Salonia, who was the man who strongly wanted this day, and Alessandro Archer, who hard worked for that, and obviously the VHL Alliance. And it was a great full days, and we learned a lot of things, and we met a lot of people, and this is fantastic for all patients, and I think all for physicians too. Yesterday, I spoke with an expert doctor who said to me that he learned a lot of things in this day, and if he learned a lot of things, that's wonderful for us, of course. I'm the president of the Associazione Italiana Famiglie VHL, VHL, Italian Association of VHL Family. And I want to explain first that VHL Alliance years ago removed the word family from his name, and that's the reason. They work on VHL. Rachel explained what the goals of the association. Okay, they have a lot of money and they do research. We are a small association and we work with the patients. And our first goal is the support of the other patients. And you know, when one person has a illness or a serious illness or a cancer is a problem for the entire family, of course, in all the illness. But VHL is also genetic illness. And so in one family, you don't have only one person with VHL. We have more than one person with VHL. We are children and parents, brothers and sisters, grandparents and nephew. And so to manage the VHL is really, really difficult and heavy. And so that's the reason, because we think that the name family in our association must be present. I'm here with my family. My wife, I have to thank my wife, is 25 years, he faced with me the VHL, and then my children are here, the VHL affected one, but also the not VHL affected one, and all wanted to participate to these days. And that's the reason, because VHL is in our family, not only on me. But VHL is not only a genetic disease, but it's only a rare disease, as we know perfectly. And so we are not so much people, and we have to work together together. I have to thank you, Rachel, for his work as president of VHL Europa. We, 10 years ago, founded the Federation of VHL National Alliance. This is Europa, you see. Europa, it's big as the US, has more population, but we have not only one country, we have 27 countries, we have 24 different languages, and not all the VHL patients speak English. I don't speak English well, as you see. Sorry, Rachel, before, but I didn't read really, it was too small. And so I read it very bad, I know. We are 24 languages, and it's difficult. We are 27 different laws and 27 different health systems. And so it's really, really difficult to work together, but we try to do it. And even about the Belzuti Fund, we know that in Europe we cannot use it at all. But in some places in Germany and Greece, the compassionate use in certain conditions is allowed. In Italy, it's not allowed at all. So it's very, very difficult, because we have very different system, healthy system. And difficult for us is also in Italy, because not in all the country we have the same possibility to cure VHL. You know, we have a clinical care center here in Milano, and it's here. We have a second VHL center important in Padua, and it's here. So they're not far, but what's happened for people who live here, who live in Sicily, who live in Sardinia? If they want to have a VSL center, they have to fly or to get a train, catch a train, and go there. So we try to help the families in that, because it's very heavy. You can imagine. You have a lot of follow-up, a lot of scan, a lot of consultation, and the family we have to repeat for 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and it's very difficult and it's very expensive. And sometimes our job is only to help, even in practical information. Okay, you have to go there, which is the convenient hotel, apartment. I know a family who lives in Sicily who have to come in the north of Italy for its control of the grandmother, the mother, the sons. And they have to come so many times that they decided to buy an apartment in the north of Italy. And you can understand what is the difficulty. So we listened in these 2 days all the medical problem, the medical solution, and we are thankful for that, but we have to face also with the life, daily life, as we listened before. So I want to thank everyone of the physician, everyone work on VHL, because we need them. And please, I have also to don't forget that young man, our family member, is died 2 days ago. Very, very young man from VHL. So I have to thank all people who works for help us. And so I leave the desk to Janet, right? Thank you very much.
So last but not least, I'm extremely pleased to introduce Janet Thompson. Janet is a retired longtime commander in the U.S. Navy and is the current executive director of the VHL Alliance. She has led VHLA in the next phase of growth, and she will be speaking about the state of the Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm the last one. I'm keeping you from going home and having a glass of Chianti, so I will be as quick and brief as I can. But before, if you're a medical student, could you please stand? If you're a medical student that attended today, I would love for you to stand, and I would love everyone to give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for staying to the end. Thank you for taking your weekend to join us. Thank you for caring enough about the VHL in our community. You are the next generation, and we are thrilled to have you here. And I want to thank Dr. Larker and Professor Salonia for inviting you, and thank you for showing up. We really, really appreciate it. Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. Do I just hit the button? Just click? There we go. Okay. So what is the VHL Alliance? We are a patient advocacy organization that was born alongside the discovery of the VHL gene. And like most patient advocacy groups, especially in the rare disease space, we were formed by a parent. So a mother of a VHL patient and a spouse of a VHL patient. Many of you know her, Joyce Graff. She was a force of nature. She started this organization over 30 years ago. She still has a presence in the organization, and she definitely created a very, very strong foundation over 30 years ago. Our mission, of course, like all patient advocacy groups, is to improve the health outcomes and the quality of life of families that navigate this condition. We do that through empowering these families through education, through emotional support, through community building events. We do that through finding them or helping to connect them to the best comprehensive, multidisciplinary VHL clinical care. And we do that also by research, raising funds to help find the newest, most innovative treatments for VHL, and ultimately, of course, finding a cure. Our vision, you might have heard, is curing cancer through VHL. Over the past few decades, the VHL community, I'm sure it's the same in Europa as it is in America, have been extremely willing to always be a part of clinical trials, and it is because of that willingness to contribute to the future of research is arguably why we are fortunate enough to have a drug treatment today. Oh, I'm going backwards. Okay, so the first pillar, empowering our families. We have VHL publications. We have a new blog that's gone out. We have a website. We have educational webinars. We bring the experts to our families, and we like to do that in a way that is making that complex information a little bit more digestible. If you're like me, my brain kind of exploded this afternoon. For the past 2 days, there's a lot of really good information, but sometimes I need a little bit of help to say, how does that matter to me? Like, how does that impact my life today? So that's one of the things the Alliance is striving to do. We have in-person events. We've instituted a new national walk program, which has the dual effort of being a community building opportunity, plus raising funds for research. We have wellness coaching, individual one-on-one wellness coaching, online support groups, and we're about to relaunch a new ambassador pilot program, which is leveraging the power of our families who want to contribute, who want to volunteer, and by training them and making them an ambassador, we're able to extend our research from the staff into local communities across the country. So a plug for some of our events that we're having in 2025. We have a young adult retreat. It's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona, with our partners at the Mayo Clinic on March 1st. We have our national VHL walk team. This past year, during May Awareness Month in the U.S., May is designated as the VHL Awareness Month. This past May was our first national walk. We had 31 teams across the country, which is outstanding. We'd love to see our friends in Europe do the same thing. In 2025, it will be Saturday, May 17th. And every year we have a family meeting, a family weekend that brings patients and their families together for community building, for collaboration, and engagement with a local clinical care center. So on August 1st, our next family meeting will be with our friends at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So the clinical pillar of the VHL Alliance, we recognize 40 von Hippel-Lindau clinical centers across the country. We are going to strive in the next couple of years to strengthen and to grow that network. We have a very strong relationship with the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, and in particular, the National Cancer Institute. As you heard at the opening, we are very, very fortunate that the director of the National Cancer Institute is a VHL researcher, and I can't tell you how excited our community was when that decision was made last year. So our relationship with NIH is critical for patients around the world, but in the US in particular, where we have a significant challenge with underinsured populations or people that just can't afford to get to a clinical care center. The NIH and that natural patient protocol study that Dr. Linehan has started many, many years ago provides an opportunity for VHL patients to come to Bethesda at the cost of the US government and be treated for their care. We also have tumor boards, which I know Dr. Iliopoulos has been pounding home. It's an opportunity to invite clinicians or even primary care managers that treat VHL patients that do not have access to the wealth of knowledge that we experience here, and they can come to the monthly tumor board, present their cases, and have a team of VHL experts give them guidance on how to treat that patient. We have CME opportunities. We also host genetic counseling rotations from Mass General every summer. Tumor board, tumor board, tumor board. So Dr. Iliopoulos, if you're out there, I'm plugging it. Okay, this is what I'm really excited about. This year, we have supercharged our pillar of research. So, of course, the Medical Symposium is one. This is one of the most exciting opportunities that the VHL Alliance will host. I've been thrilled at the feedback that we've gotten from our researchers and from our clinicians. I can't thank Dr. Larcher and Professor Salonia enough, and San Rafael for hosting. It's an exceptional opportunity to come together, and there is no replacing in-person collaboration. This is the first medical symposium, VHL medical symposium we've had in person since 2017, I believe, and I think the community was hungry, and I think we did a very good job bringing the brains together in one room for collaboration. So you may know about our VHL Research Grant Program. The VHL Alliance is the largest private funder of VHL research outside of the US federal government. And I'll give a plug to our 2024 Research Grant Program, which is opening up very soon. And finally, I'm very, very proud of the US federal research funding that our organization has worked very hard for in the last 4 years. You might have heard of a program called CDMRP. It is alphabet soup when we talk about this program, but ultimately is that a Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense, has a large federal research program called the CDMRP, and we were successful in lobbying Congress for VHL-specific research to have a seat at that table and to have access of those millions and millions of dollars. So it's opening up an aperture of funding opportunities specifically for our research community. To do that took a significant amount of advocacy work that our families engaged in. So for them, I am really, really grateful. And of course, the VHL Alliance Research Council. None of this could happen without that brain trust, right? So we have Ruhi Day-Ray, of course, who's co-chair of the VHL Alliance Research Council, Dr. Othan Iliopoulos, who is the co-chair of the VHL Alliance Research Council. We have our new research fellow, Dr. Jessica Hess. So between those three amazing researchers, we hope to engage with this council a little bit more closely, so that they can give the Alliance the strategic guidance that we need to know where to invest our funds so that we can collaborate all of this amazing research together and we can move the needle forward. Did I miss something? I missed something. Yep, this is the big plug. Okay, so our research grant program, we tweaked our research grant program a little bit this year. First of all, our letters of instruction, it is open, so if you want to submit an LOI, the deadline is November 1st. Last year we had our largest submission of LOIs, so we encourage you to submit again. The applications will be due in January, and the awards will be announced on April 11th. But what I'm really, really excited about is the different types of awards that we are giving out this year. Of course, we have that traditional research. So if you are a seasoned VHL researcher and you have a project that you would like to be funded, please bring that application to the Alliance. We also have our traditional pilot program is for those first-time novel ideas and projects that is a one-time grant of $25,000, but what we're really excited about is the postdoc fellowship grants. So we have up to 2 that we will award. It's a 2-year, did I put over 3 years? I think it's over 2 years. No, it's a 3-year postdoc. Okay, sorry. So $100,000 for 2 years for any postdoc, at least 3 years or longer post your doctorate. We want to really pivot our attention towards the next generation of research. So again, I can't stress highly enough, it is open. November 1st is the deadline for letters of instruction. This is the VHL team. I love my team. This is a better picture of our team. Yeah, I've been seeing all of these lovely pictures of lab teams that are coming to. So we have that same kind of esprit de corps. It's very important. And to go back one more slide, all of these people here wake up every day thinking about our families, not just in America, but all over the world, right? We are here to serve you. We are also here to serve clinicians. We are also here to serve researchers. We will do whatever we can to be a force multiplier and to make sure that we are strategic in synchronizing our efforts and making sure that we can get the best health outcomes for our families. With that, I think I am the last. So we are ready to close out the session. I'd like to bring up Dr. Ruhi Day-Ray. I would love to bring up Dr. Larcher and Professor Solonia. Dr. Iliopoulos, if you're out there, I would love for you to come as well and have any final remarks before we release this crowd.
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to thank every one of you, the patients, their families, the researchers, the clinicians, the students. I think every one of us made this meeting truly worth it, and I cannot thank San Rafael, Dr. Salonia, and Dr. Larcher for all of their hard work in putting this wonderful event together with the VHLA, of course. And so for that, I am most thankful and grateful for all of your hospitality, so thank you.
So let me just wrap up, touching upon the topics that were raised in this superb session. I think that gave us the most important message, which is the extremely privilege that we have in terms of the opportunity of working with you guys and working in this very, very, very peculiar field. So this is extremely important for us, and this is something that we are bringing back home in our everyday routine. Thanks a lot.
To try and very briefly sum up what I've learned over the last 2 days, there is a room for science, there is a room for research, there is a room for networking, there is a room for empathy, and to cut a very long story short, thank you so much. That's all, folks.
So in July of 1994, I walked into the lab as the end of my first year of medical fellowship, and my at that time mentor-to-be, Bill Kaelin, says, what do I want to work on, P53 or RB? And I said, half of the world works on this one, and the other half of the world works on this, on the other. So none of them, we should the hell find something else to work on. And the last month in my clinic, I had an attending who brought a family, and they told me this is a VHL family. That was the first time that I heard this word. So I said, let's work on this thing because nobody else works on this, and we'll be quiet for a while. So it wouldn't be in my wildest dreams that, what is it, 30 years later, I would have a medication, or we will have a medication to present to you and try to put out of business our surgical friends, the urologists, the neurosurgeons, and the abdominal surgeons. So I think this is a emotional problem, a moment for us in the VHL world, for the patients, for the caregivers, joking around, of course, for surgery, everybody is very touched to have this. We learned about new treatments these 2 days. We learned about new insights that our colleagues in the labs are giving us about how the disease progresses, what other targets are there. You heard about synthetic lethalities. We learn about complex imaging approaches. So I think that we're all should be living with a renewed hope about what is happening in the field. And I think the next time we're going to meet in about 2 years again, we're going to meet in all these things that Janet says, but the next 2 years, in our next meeting, I am sure and I hope that we will know how to combine this drug with new medications and how to combat the resistance that we see in some patients and how to even increase further the efficacy. And definitely and hopefully, if the right agencies of the NIH that they're led by our fearless leader and Merck and other companies have how to essentially learn to use it in a more rational and effective way. Thank you all for being here.
That concludes the 16th International VHL Symposium. We hope to see you in 2 years. To be determined. Stay tuned.